Okay, so friends and colleagues, let's get working because we've got a very short time together. I'm going to sit here in a student chair rather than the teacher's chair up at the front because I don't like being a teacher and I'm not very good at controlling classrooms or anything like that, so I'm going to be here. My name is P.Grundy. You may have seen me this morning. This title, Pragmatic, Accommodation in Intercultural Talk, what I want to do is share with you some intercultural talk data, and I'm going to begin by working through the first little bit of the data I'm going to put in front of you on slides. And then you will get a handout with this same data on and the same explanations on a handout. So don't worry, but I'm doing it without a handout to begin with because I want you to focus on each utterance turn by turn. And then I'm going to give you the data that I'm working through and a whole lot more of the same bit of talk, and I'm going to ask you then to work in workshop mode and think about it a little bit and see if you agree with my analysis. And then when we've done that, if we have time, but we won't go on beyond the end because we've got a reception, and I imagine a reception means we might get a drink of the kind that we're looking forward to. I will give you some more intercultural data of the same sort, and I will ask you to work on it if we have time in a certain way, which I'll tell you about later. So, okay, this is the first data. If you'd like to look at the screen, oh, look at that. This is the beginning of a little exchange. It involves three people. It was recorded in Britain, in Durham, in the northeast of England. It involves H, who is a host mother, and English is her first language. A host mother is the polite word for a landlady who provides a home for overseas visitors to Britain. And C, who is a Chinese house guest. This C, she speaks Mandarin Chinese as her first language, but she actually studies at the Institute of Education in Hong Kong, and she is studying to be a teacher of English. So her English should be pretty good, really. And she is in Britain on a semester exchange. And J, who is the other house guest, who is female and Japanese. Japanese is her L1, and she is an English language learner, so her English isn't terribly good. And J, the Japanese student, has a friend who is coming to join her from Japan at the language school, but they are not sure with which host family she is going to stay. And they've been discussing which host family it is. And J thinks that she may be staying with somebody called Jean Bell. And the host mother says no, but then a little pause. No, that's Newton Hall. Newton Hall is the name of a housing estate. So this person, Jean Bell, lives at Newton Hall. She says, no, that's Newton Hall. And the Chinese student says, Newton Hall, yeah. And the host mother says, that's Jean Bell. And the Chinese student says, Jean Bell, echoing. And as the Chinese student says Bell, the host mother begins. So those angled brackets, I don't know whether yes, those angled brackets indicate that Bell and Butler are spoken simultaneously in overlap. That's Jean Bell, but the old lady at Chesterley Street is the next town near Durham, little pause, I think I said to you bad chest. So she does a fake cough. I think I said to you bad chest. And the Chinese student says, oh yes. Now, these equal signs, if I can get it to work, for some reason, oh yes, these equal signs show that this is latched. So, the end of the and the beginning of the oh yes are contemporaneous. Oh yes, and the yes is contemporaneous with the end of oh yes. Oh yes, yes. She laughs. Ah. I think she will go to her. Ah. That's it. Okay. So this is this little exchange. I'm going to work through it turn by turn with you on screen in the hope that it will become clearer to you as I do it. And then I'm going to show you the whole exchange. Okay. And I'm going to do it turn by turn. So the host mother begins. She says, no. That's Newton Hall. So that's a metalinguistic no. She's correcting what somebody else had said. It doesn't mean no, I don't agree with you. It means no, that's not right, not I don't agree with you. So it's metalinguistic. And the use of that, no, that's Newton Hall. That's Newton Hall. we call it distal. In other words, it shows something at a distance. It's not close. No, that's Newton Hall. But it's not physical distance, is it? It's informational distance. No, that's Newton Hall, somewhere else. So it's distance informationally. You've got the wrong information. And Newton Hall, you could argue, is a metonymy. In other words, come and sit at the table. In other words, it's a place name used for where your friend is going to stay. So you could argue it's a metonymy. And the Chinese student echoes it. You'll notice when you look at these data, the Chinese student is a great echoer. Most users of language have characteristic behavior, especially in second languages, and this student echoes. I think that, you can decide later, but I think she echoes partly because she is helping her Japanese friend, whose English is very limited and who needs to hear everything twice. The Chinese student says, Newton Hall, yeah. And that's a metalinguistic yeah, meaning, yeah, I know where Newton Hall is. Yeah, I know about Newton Hall. And the host mother says, that's Jean Bell. So that has a contrastive effect. And the utterance is elliptical. She says, the person you're thinking of isn't Jean Bell. Jean Bell lives at Newton Hall. So this is a very compacted utterance. That's Jean Bell. You know, you're wrong about Jean Bell. Jean Bell lives at Newton Hall. It's not the person you're thinking of. So this is why it's difficult to understand, because it's so simple, because it's so elliptical, because it's so condensed. No, that's Newton Hall. Newton Hall, yeah. That's Jean Bell. And then it gets interesting. The Chinese student says, Jean Bell, echoes again. Newton Hall, she echoed. Now she echoes again, Jean Bell. But, and I've called this but metasequential, because it's not used like but is to contrast one thing with another. It's used to re-establish the relevant topic. The topic is who the Japanese student's friend is going to stay with as the host mother. But, so let's get back on topic. But the old lady at Chesterley Street, and then there's that little pause. And I've called this, if I can get the thing, I've called this little pause here a topic marker. So the topic of this utterance is the old lady at Chesterley Street. Notice that the old lady at Chesterley Street is not the grammatical subject. She is the topic. And in fact, what is going to happen later, if you look down the talk, down to H, I think she will go to her. So what H actually wants to say is, I think she will go to the old lady at Chesterley Street. But she sets up the old lady at Chesterley Street as a topic. If you're a native speaker of English, you can't do this. This is not English. This is Chinese. Chinese is a topic comment order language. Japanese is a very interesting language because in Japanese you can either have a topic comment structure or a grammatical subject predicate structure. And in Japanese there are two markers, ga and wa, and ga tells you it's grammatical subject and wa tells you it's topic. So this little pause here is wa in Japanese. It's a topic. It's a little pause as it would be. In other words, this uneducated British lady is speaking Chinese or Japanese in English. This is intercultural accommodation. She is actually speaking to these two students in their own language in English. The discourse structure is Chinese or Japanese. But the old lady at Chesterley Street, and then you've got this interesting little, I think I said to you bad chest. So here you've got a hedged, I think. We call it a hedge because she is not committing herself. It's like, hedging your investment. She is not committing herself to what she says because she's not sure whether she really did say she had a bad chest. I think I said to you bad chest. And this is an evidential, I think I said to you. So this is kind of what do you recall, what do I recall? We call these evidentials. I think I said to you is a hedged evidential, bad chest. Now notice that bad chest is a pigeon register. She doesn't say, I think I said to you she had a bad chest. Or I think I said to you she has a bad chest. She is speaking pigeon English. She is speaking a reduced English because she is communicating with two people who don't have English as a first language. I think I said to you bad chest. Now notice that this is also a reference modifier. Bad chest. The use of, well, you know, I guess, that there are two kinds of modification, and they are very noticeable in English, what we call reference and referent modifiers. And they happen in English a lot because of the word order problem. English should be a noun-adjective order language, but it isn't. Because it's an object-verb language, you would expect adjectives to follow nouns. And they don't do yet, because English is still changing. It's been changing for 1,300 years from an object-verb order language to a verb-object order language. This is why I said in the last session that English is not a Germanic language. I mean, it isn't a Germanic language anymore, really. It's changing noticeably. There are one or two other problems with word order, and actually just to say about adjective-noun combinations in English, people don't usually say in English, they don't usually say, look at the green grass, they say, isn't the grass green? So there's a tendency to try not to have adjective-noun combinations. But where you get them, they tend to be reference modifiers, where you couldn't put the adjective after the noun. So they tend to modify the noun class in some way. So a good example would be a distant cousin. It's a type of cousin. A third cousin is a type of cousin. A blackbird, oh, you can hear it's become one word. Blackbird is a type of bird. And in fact, half the blackbirds in the world are brown, aren't they? Because the girls are brown and the boys are black. So a blackbird is not a bird which is black. It's a reference modifier. A bad chest is not a chest which is morally corrupt in some way, but it describes a medical condition of a kind. And I don't know about Russian, but I guess you can't translate bad chest into Russian and get the same meaning as in English, that she all the time is coughing. It's totally different in Russian, exactly. So, thank you. Thank goodness for that. I took a risk there. So, bad chest is a reference modifier. Now, reference modifiers, oh, criminal lawyer is a good example, isn't it? Although now I come to think of it, I know some criminal lawyers who are also criminals. You know, can a criminal lawyer, it's not the same thing as a lawyer who is criminal. It's a reference modifier. You know, sorry, I hope nobody has a relative who's a lawyer. My father was a lawyer, so I feel it. Okay, I think I said to you bad chest. It's an idiom, because it's a reference modifier. And this British uneducated person who knows nothing about language and second language learning knows intuitively that this is a problem for the Japanese learner of English who won't know what bad chest. She knows at some level of unconsciousness that bad chest is problematic for a language learner because it's a reference modifier, although she's never heard the term reference modifier. And you know, this is generative linguistics, isn't it? We know lots of things that we don't know we know, and so on. And this is why she then gives a demonstration. So I've said a reference modifier, hence the demonstration. She demonstrates what bad chest is. This is the most amazing and beautiful piece of language. She is accommodating to the needs of her intercultural audience, and although she is a native speaker of English, she is not speaking English as she would to any other native speaker at all. She is using a topic comment structure, and she is recognizing when a reference modifier, an idiom is. But the old lady at Chestley Street, I think I said to you, bad chest, Nobody would do this if they were speaking to another native speaker, clearly. Really interesting. By the way, it raises the question, what is the point of teaching your students to speak British English if no British person will ever speak to them in that language themselves? But anyhow, that's by the by. And the Chinese student says, oh yes, well, I don't know what this is, but I've called it a response to evidentiality. I think I said to you, bad chest. Yes. Oh yes, you did. I think that's what the Chinese student means. And the Japanese student goes, yes. And I'm just guessing now. I think this is a response to the demonstration. Yes, I get the meaning of bad chest. Yes, I know what you mean. And then she laughs. Ah! You know how Japanese students laugh. What does laughter do in talk? Laughter is almost always a conservative strategy, and it means I've just heard something that is incongruous and that I don't like. Decent people never laugh. It is said that Jesus never laughed. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it's said. Laughter is a conservative emotion. What it does is restore the status quo. This Japanese student has just heard something disgusting. Somebody imitating coughing. You know, if you're Japanese, ooh, this is an awful thing to have heard when somebody does this, and she says, yes, now I get what you mean. It's horrible. Let's get back to business. And the Chinese student, I'm guessing, of course, you know, all analysis is post hoc. The Chinese student says, and I think that this is a recognition that the topic is completed. So the topic is over. The old lady at Chesterley Street, that's the topic. But it's followed by a parenthetical, I think I said to you, bad chest, oh yes, yes, Now I know what we're talking about. Chinese has got it. Okay? And then the host mother says, I think, and now she speaks word by word for the benefit of the Japanese student, I think she will go to her. Well, imagine speaking like this to another native speaker. I think she will go to her. You know, I wouldn't do that to my wife because I would get a smack on the face. So this is accommodate. This is a hedged comment, I think. She doesn't know, and it's oriented to the Japanese student's status as a native speaker. And the Chinese student says, again, the Chinese student recognizes that the comment has now been added to the topic. She'll go to her. So basically, this structure is the old lady at Chesterley Street. I think your friend will go to her. That's basically what she's saying in English. If she'd been speaking to me, she would have said, I think she'll go to the old lady at Chesterley Street. But that's not what happens here, because this is an intercultural context. I'm guessing it's post hoc, but I think it's quite persuasive. Yeah? Are you ready for a handout? Now, you're going to get a handout in 3 pages, one by one. So when you get it, you need to take one. You'll get the first page first and pass the pile on quickly to the next person. And when it's got to about here, I will start the next one running. And when you've got 3, you've got what you want. So I start this. I'm going to read to you, and then I'm going to turn it into a workshop. But I'm going to begin by reading. We can distinguish intercultural communication, communication between members of different communities, from intracultural communication, communication between members of the same community. That's easy. And now I'm going to be controversial. And we can distinguish cross-cultural communication, where a member takes into account the different from their own cultural expectations of the person with whom they interact, from intercultural communication of the kind that occurs when a lingua franca that isn't the native language of either speaker is used. Intercultural competence, not cross-cultural competence, but intercultural competence is what interactants and most learners of English need if they're to communicate effectively in a lingua franca. Well, you know the figure. I mean, nobody knows where it comes from. I think it came from Denmark originally. So Gida isn't here to confirm, but the estimate is that 80% of the use of English as a second language involves other speakers of English as a second language and not native speakers of English. That's the estimate. And of course the internet has made that much, much, much greater now. So most of the people we teach do not want to speak British or American English, or if they do, they're out of date and they're mistaken. They want to be able to use English as a lingua franca interculturally. Okay. One issue worth thinking through is whether a native speaker of English uses English in an other than native way in an intercultural context. And this little bit of data, this little bit of data clearly shows that this speaker does. By examining native speaker data found in lingua franca talk contexts, we may be able to determine some of the properties of native speaker behavior which might help us to take decisions about the kind of English we should teach. This approach is intended as a complementary counterbalance to the work of Jenny Jenkins, Barbara Zeidelhofer, and so on, who've argued that a core lingua franca syllabus should be derived from second language data. You know Barbara Zeidelhofer's famous argument, English is being changed more by second language users than by first language users. She's probably right, I think, but who's to prove it? But her claim is, therefore, we might as well, teach only the English that people are going to end up with anyway, the lingua franca core. This particularly applies in English, of course, to interdental fricatives. So the sound th and th that are very rare, that occur only in a few European languages and in Arabic, but they're very rare in world languages, are very difficult to master. In fact, working class people who live in London don't say thing, they say thing. And ordinary people who live in Dublin don't say thing, they say ting. And every German says sing, or, you know, and so on. So lots of people have said, what is the point of learning interdental fricatives? They don't affect intelligibility, and they are very difficult to learn, and so on. And anyhow, they're very rare in human language, more or less useless. And this argument is then extended to a whole lot of other things. You don't have to accept the argument, and in fact, I don't accept the core idea myself. And what I'm saying is, even more interesting than what second language users do interculturally is what native speakers do that on the whole we've ignored, and these things are very interesting. So this little bit of data looks at these three different speakers in an intercultural encounter. Now the first bit of data you have underneath is the bit that we have up on the screen. H establishes who they aren't talking about, Jean Bell, and hazards a guess at the host mother with whom the student under discussion will be placed. H employs a Chinese/Japanese topic comment discourse structure. And then what I've got on the right is exactly the same analysis as you see up on the screen. And to make life easier for you in this workshop, I have then divided the rest of the talk into sections. The next one I call J and C, co-construct J's supposition, and H provides Japanese-style continuation and acceptance signals. And then on the second sheet, H provides a negative opinion following an account in which her multiple affiliations are oriented to. C and J provide back-channel response. And then the top of the third sheet, J provides a negative instance and a formulation eliciting different reactions from H and C to her troubles talk. And then finally, the last section, J provides a further negative instance which C and J try to make accessible to H before J provides a formulation. Now, what I suggest you do with these, by the way, these data were collected by the Chinese student in this group, and she just left a dictaphone running for a week in the house, and everything was recorded, and people forgot who they were and what they were doing. So these are pretty natural data. It wasn't a set-up situation of any kind. I'm not going to play you the sound file because it's difficult to hear and time doesn't allow. Trust me, although you don't hear the intonation contours, the transcription is accurate, very accurate. Okay, what I suggest you do is you work with one or two other people. You can work by yourself if you're like me and you hate other people, but if you're a normal, sociable human being, you work with one or two of your neighbors. I suggest you choose one of these sections, not necessarily the next one. You choose, you know, a longer or a shorter as you like, and you read through the little bit of text and you look at it alongside the explanations I've provided on the right, and you see whether you think you agree or whether you can make out what's going on. So this is really an attempt to do a guided interpretation of some intercultural English talk data, and then we'll share any questions or problems, and then I'll give you some more data to look at later. So I suggest you spend about 15 minutes now working with a partner. You don't have to work with the person sitting next to you, by the way. If you've made eye contact with a lovely person sitting somewhere else in the room, you can go away and talk to them. You can sit outside in these wonderful armchairs round the edge to work if you're more comfortable. I will give you a signal in 15 minutes to come back to the table, and we'll share what we think we've discovered. Is that okay? And if you desperately need me to come over while you're working, you can wave your arms about and I will come to you. Okay? Work, please. Have you got one of these? Shall I interrupt you a second? I've been asked by somebody what Izuchi is. Would anybody else like me to say something about Izuchi?
You said it's agreement.
No, Izuchi is a Japanese word, and it actually means, it describes beating together in turn. It's what people do when they're making a Japanese sword and they temper steel. Two people take turns at beating. And it's the word the Japanese use for using the back channel to agree with somebody. So in Japanese, you have expressions like ne, which means yes, I agree, ne, and so on. And the Japanese all the time do this with Izuchi. They do little markers of agreement with each other. We don't have a word for it in English, and I don't think you have a word for it in Russian. You have to explain it in a periphrastic way. The Japanese have no word interrupt or interruption. They have to explain it in a periphrastic way. So Japanese talk consists of using the back channel to encourage the speaker to continue and signaling that you've got the message. So this is what Izuchi is. So in this talk, the Japanese speaker is expecting the British native speaker to provide Izuchi all the time, because in Japanese, every utterance, almost every utterance has what the Japanese call a sentence final particle. It's actually an utterance final particle, and it can be a question marker, but usually it indicates what the speaker would like to happen next. And the commonest is ne, means I'd like you to signal you agree with me, ne. There's one called yo. They go yo, and when I do yo, it means I expect you to say something inferentially related and rather clever. So I just say to you, my daughter is at the university in Moscow, yo, and you say, she must be clever then. And they also have yo ne, which means I'm sure you'll agree that this is worth saying yo to. So if you want to, you can agree with that, or you can respond to the yo part of it. So in Japanese, if you don't have a sentence final particle, it means topic over, had enough, we don't need to carry on. So, you know, if you say to somebody, how old are you? They say, I'm 28. They don't say 28 ne or 28 yo. They say 28 over, and then you have the next bit of... So Izuchi means using the back channel to agree, and the reason why it's so important in Japanese, or to support the speaker, the reason why it's so important in Japanese is because unlike a language like English, or I guess Russian, where the beginning of your turn indicates your commitment to a proposition, as on the screen, I think I said to you. So your I think is really the discourse head, and I think I said to you bad chest, that's the less important part. In Japanese, you typically say, I said to you bad chest, ne. And you're supposed to go bad chest, ne. You know, you said it, ne, or just ne. So in Japanese, it's very important to get response to your turns. That's the point. Okay, discuss. Okay, right. What I suggest we do is I'll invite you to say anything you want to or ask any question you want to. If you want to talk about a specific part of the text, can I suggest you use the line number? You say line number so-and-so. I don't mind starting with a thing, but I would like to hear you because, you know, I'm boring to myself. Okay, let me start off with line 24, 25. The Japanese there, so maybe daughter, daughter house. Yes? If we start there. Did anybody look at this? No, sorry, let me start at line 20. Yes, mother and our daughters. You'll see on the right-hand side, our daughters at line 21, I have suggested this could be like the Japanese no particle. Does anybody know about no in Japanese? In Japanese, this is a very difficult concept if you speak Russian or English because you can't do it in our languages. You can alter the ontological status of what you have just said in Japanese by adding no to it, which is a nominalizer. So I can say to you, I came to Moscow yesterday, no. And what it means is, it's not a matter of truth or falsity. There was a coming by me yesterday to Moscow. It's a fact. It's not an assertion anymore. It's a fact. It's not to be discussed. Its truth status is not in doubt. If I say to you in Russian or English, I came to Moscow yesterday, you can say to me, did you? Did you really? Are you sure? Wasn't it the day before? In Japanese, if you say, I came to Moscow yesterday, no, its ontological status has changed. It's become a noun and not a finite structure anymore. Now, this appeared in Japanese first about 300 years ago. So it's quite new in language. Oh, she isn't here now, but somebody early this afternoon said there is nothing new. Every new custom is really an old custom. Actually, this was new in Japanese 300 years ago. No. Well, no existed before, but without this function. No in Japanese is also the genitive case marker. Goodness me, look at this beautiful data in English. Yes, mother and our daughters. That's where she's going. The house belongs to the mother and daughter. No. I'm not saying it is this, I can't prove it, but this is the genitive case marker in English that's very difficult to explain unless you say it's a translation of no from Japanese into English, and it means that's the fact. That's the fact. It is the most beautiful. I mean, when you look at this bit of talk, it is truly beautiful. What these people are doing in co-constructing talk is just fantastic. Each speaking their own languages in English, and the native speaker of English also speaking Chinese and Japanese. And this tiny bit of it, it's only a guess, but is really amazing. Anything else you'd like to draw attention? I mean, of course, this is incredibly rich data. So, and I know you've had a very, 10 minutes is nothing. What's really striking in these data are the uses of pauses to constrain the talk and make it interpretable, and the uses of vocalizations like R and O. These are not words, these are vocalizations, but they have a very important pragmatic function. And if we try and teach our language learners not to pause and not to go R and and so on, we are stopping them communicating pragmatically and instructing the person to whom they are speaking in the way they want to be understood. So these pauses, these failures, are actually really strong ways of signaling daughter pause, daughter house. When she pauses, you know something is coming next. Wait, daughter house. And you know that's an elaborative repair, and what she really wants to say is daughter house. And this is what she is capable of at this level. And it's just wrong to try to prevent people, relaying essentially cognitive functions so directly through language, I think. Do you want me to give you the last data? We haven't time to talk about it, but what I will do is this time I will pass it out. There's only two sheets, one sheet one way and one the other. So please only take one each so they go all the way round. And this involves an 80-something-year-old lady and her son, who is married to the host mother of this Hong Kong paying guest. So take one each. When you get one, I think we should stop because we've run out of time. So I'll just say thank you very much for coming. I'm sorry to be so political, but it's the way it is. Thank you.